Kathy, thank you very much indeed. All right, let's do some rapid-fire analysis of our own here in Joburg. Sandile Swana from the Wits School of Governance, Dr. David Monyae, the Director of the Centre for Africa-China Studies at the University of Joburg, and Ann Bernstein, Executive Director of the Centre for Enterprise Development, all with me. All right, Sandile, let's talk disruption first, the EFF. Did it work for the EFF, or did Thandi Modise actually come out being the person everybody liked?
I think it worked for them both. I think Thandi Modise handled the situation exceptionally well. We need to commend her for that, adhering to the rules. On the side of the EFF, both Thandi Modise had to allow protest, dissent. Our democracy is about that. People must be able to express different opinions.
There was a moment, Dr. Monyae, when I wondered, especially there was this moment when all the political parties got a chance to sort of speak for a minute. It seemed almost as if the EFF action had pushed all the other political parties together against the EFF.
Indeed. I think the major issue here is that we have to understand 30 years since the release of Nelson Mandela, there is quite a major shift that is needed. I think this cry by EFF, if there is a need for a conversation, national conversation, to deal with quite a number of issues. I think we've been dealing with a lot of issues of sunset, and there is a need of sunrise, and therefore failure to listen to what EFF is saying, I think they are going to gain more support as more crisis with ESCOM, with unemployment, and I think we have to take them quite seriously instead of just being angry. Democracy in general is noisy all over the world. We have to get used to this. It won't end this year. I think next year and the year coming, we're going to get this kind of noise.
A new sunrise and a new dawn can sound very similar sometimes.
Indeed.
Let's talk about the actual content of the speech now. Big focus on youth unemployment. The President saying tonight it was the biggest problem that we face. Ann Bernstein, you focus on this issue. The measures announced tonight, the government interventions, 1% of the top of the budget that will go to intervention plans. Is that going to do the trick?
Well, I agree with the President that this is the biggest challenge South Africa faces. I don't think you deal with youth unemployment through special initiatives, through training. Remember, we lost 500,000 jobs for young people in the last decade. Lots more people entered the labour force, 500,000 less jobs. I'm looking for reform. I'm looking for scale. So I don't think this is the answer. I don't know what this 1% means. It's more intervention. I don't know. More sort of public works, clearly, the youth program. I think that there's an illusion in South Africa that you can look at unemployed young people and say, gee, we're going to make you entrepreneurs. I think you set them up for failure. People who haven't had a chance to work, who know nothing about a particular sector, how are they going to start a business? We don't back money for entrepreneurs generally. Most of the banks can't find enough people for their small enterprise funds. So I found that's not very exciting. He said it was the most important thing he wants to do. I don't think it's convincing. What we need is much faster growth. And we need reform of the labour market so we can have more job-rich growth. I don't understand this fascination with new cities. South Africa's cities really matter. Our current metros need much more presidential attention. And setting up a new city, which may or may not happen, around Lanseria for 350,000 people, so what? This doesn't affect the millions and millions of people who need much better transport in our metropolitan areas, who need access to opportunity and hope. And there was nothing on the metropolitan areas tonight.
Okay, nothing on that, you say. Sandile, quite a lot on electricity, though. I mean, the one aspect of it which is new, as far as I know, is that municipalities in good financial standing, there is a caveat, but municipalities will be allowed to buy power directly from independent power producers. There's a court application on the book right now in Western Cape, where the Western Cape, the province, actually was asking for permission to do just this. This is a big shift.
It's a big positive shift. And you must remember that historically, these municipalities could run power stations before, and so on and so forth. So with ESCOM failing to cater for industry and the residents and so on, people need to be given a chance to get electricity from somewhere else. So that was a big philosophical shift and strategic shift. That is positive. We welcome that.
Dr. Monyae, I mean, Andile Lungisa, now he's an ANC member in Nelson Mandela Bay. He's no fan of President Ramaphosa, is my understanding, if you look at his Twitter feed. He tweeted tonight, the President announced the end of Eskom. Is he right?
Maybe, maybe not. It was shocking that as big as the news of changes within Eskom, there hasn't been much talk in terms of what Minister Gwedimantashe spoke about in terms of another Eskom. I mean, the President was mute on it, and it's quite surprising that the government itself, cabinet, is speaking with so many voices around key issues, which in itself. The overall speech for me was quite good, well detailed, but I find the President trying to balance almost everyone, big business, trade union and the like. I think what was needed, in my view, are big ideas on key issues. What are we saying about the provinces we have? The wage bill, I think issues, I mean, he didn't touch heavy and controversial issues. So he was really treading on a very thin ice, in my view.
So it was, the person, the consensus Cyril, rather than the person that people have been
Indeed. I think what is needed going forward is for him to speak specifically on key issues, on land. I mean, releasing government land, anyone could do that. I think the private land, I mean, what is he saying? He didn't say much on it. And other issues as well. I think one welcomes on issues of gender and violence. I think he has put quite a lot of emphasis on it, as well as putting money. I think that is welcome. But on a number of other key issues of moving the country forward, I thought the speech wasn't that brave enough to touch issues that we really need to move. It can't be business as usual. Since 1994, this economy needs to change to absorb massive number of youth into the mainstream economy.
Sandile, there was a promise on infrastructure that we were going to see yellow machines and cranes. I think 2 of the big 4 construction companies are currently in business rescue. I mean, and that's mainly because government hasn't actually sent through the contracts that have been promised again and again.
Yes, I think that if you are looking at this speech, a lot of the things that are mentioned here are old, actually. They were there before. The Mzimvubu Dam has been pending since 1962, and so on and so forth. What I take from this picture, even about this infrastructure issue, is that this is an effort to recover the plans that may have been abandoned 8 years ago. To say, guys, let's get back onto the horse and get these things going. And they do need to get these things going. They've destroyed an industry. Our construction industry was one of the well-respected in the world. And the engineering sector actually is bleeding heavily right now. And that engineering sector needs to be built with these projects.
Anne, are you expecting these projects to actually get off the ground?
Well, don't forget he said it's over the next decade, and we know there's not very much money to put into this infrastructure fund. So it wasn't very clear to me. I found it a strange speech with a disjuncture. So he started with, we were in a very serious situation, which I agree with, and we have to rebuild the state. But then a lot of the rest of the speech was all about faith in the state and not about bringing in more and more competitive markets. I think there were new announcements, positive announcements. I agree on Eskom. And the country's on its knees when it comes to Eskom, so they've been forced to move there. I disagree with Richard Calland. I don't think there has been real progress made on the Eskom debt, which is the big issue. Sort of how you're going to do this. I don't think there was anything there, so there's not really been progress. And there's nothing new on land reform, on a whole range of issues. So I don't think this was bold enough in a number of areas. I don't think it was what the country requires now to see the tunnel, never mind the light at the end of it. And I don't think this is going to turn the tide for the country in terms of investment or a new sort of perspective on South Africa.
Ann Bernstein, thank you very much. Director of the Centre for Enterprise Development, Sandile Swana, I do appreciate it, from the Wits School of Governance, and Dr. David Monyae, Director of the Centre for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. JJ Tabane is taking over. He's got a great number of guests with you. They're ready for you. They've been preparing. So great debates. The final word of the President tonight, before he quoted Joseph Shabalala, he said that we live in a time of great difficulty and doubt, but also laden with great opportunity. opportunities. You decide which of those you agree with you more. I'm Stephen Grootes. It's been great being with you here on Newsroom. JJ Tabana is up next. Good night.